Most people treat the rent versus buy question like it has an obvious answer, like somewhere along the way it just became accepted truth. Renting is throwing away money, buying is building wealth. And if you're still renting past a certain age, you're behind. That's the world most of us grew up in. That's what our parents believe, and that's what gets repeated every family dinner when someone finds out you're still renting. And look, I get it. Home ownership is a real goal. It's a good goal. But the way most people make this decision is completely backwards. They're running on emotion and old advice instead of actual numbers. So today, we're going to look at a framework for thinking through this decision, not the version that makes one side look obviously right, the version that actually helps you think through what makes sense for your situation. Now, before we get into it, I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice. Everything I share here is for educational purposes only. I'm going to give you a framework for how I think about this topic, but your situation is unique. Take what makes sense, leave what doesn't, and if you're making a major financial decision, always talk to a qualified professional first. All right, let's get into it. Here's what everyone in this conversation wants, whether you're a renter or an owner. You want your money to work for you. You want to stop feeling like you're falling behind. You want to make a decision that you can look back on in 10 years and feel good about. That's it. Nobody's trying to be wrong here. Nobody wakes up hoping to make a bad financial move. The problem isn't motivation. The problem is that most people are solving this question with incomplete information. Here's where it gets complicated. The argument for buying always sounds airtight. You're building equity, you're not paying someone else's mortgage, real estate goes up over time, it's an asset, and all of that is true, sort of. What nobody puts in the equation is this. Buying a home comes with costs that renters don't pay, and they add up fast. Property taxes, homeowners insurance, HOA fees if you're in a condo, or even if you're in a planned community. Maintenance, and the general rule of thumb is 1 to 2% of your home's value every single year. A leaky roof, an HVAC system that dies, a water heater that goes out on a Saturday, none of that is in the mortgage payment. Then there's the down payment. Here's how I think about this. Let's say you buy a $400,000 home. 20% down is $80,000 in cash that you just pulled out of your investment accounts, your savings, your life, and you put it into a house. That money is now illiquid. You can't touch it without refinancing or selling. And if you're in a market where your home prices are high relative to rents, which a lot of markets are right now, the monthly cost of owning that home might be significantly higher than renting something comparable. So the throwing away money argument falls apart fast when you run the actual numbers, because the question isn't rent or mortgage. The question is, what is the total cost of each path and what happens to the difference? Here's the framework shift that I think changes how you look at this. Renting is not automatically losing, and buying is not automatically winning. What actually determines which one builds more wealth over time is this. What do you do with the difference? Here's how I think about it. If you're renting for $1,800 a month and the equivalent owned home would cost you $2,800 a month all in, taxes, insurance, maintenance, mortgage, that's $1,000 difference every single month. Now, if you take that $1,000 every month and put it into a basic index fund, and historically speaking, broad market index funds have averaged somewhere around 7% annually over long periods, though past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Over 10 years, that's potentially in the range of $173,000. Over 20 years, it compounds into something significantly larger. Meanwhile, the homeowner built equity, but they also paid interest, taxes, insurance, and maintenance the entire time. The point isn't that one is better. The point is that both paths can build wealth, but only if you're intentional about what you do with the numbers. There's a second variable worth thinking about: how long you're planning to stay. The general break-even point on buying a home, the point where buying starts to make more financial sense than renting, is often cited somewhere in the 5 to 7 year range, depending on your market. If you buy and sell in 3 years, there's a real chance the math didn't work in your favor after closing costs and transaction fees. Here's the framework I'd apply to your own situation. 3 questions worth running through before you make this call. 1. What is the total monthly cost of owning versus renting in your specific market? Not just the mortgage, everything. Taxes, insurance, maintenance, budget, HOA if you live in a condo. 2. What would you actually do with the difference if you rented instead? Here's how I think about it. If the honest answer is spend it, then buying forces a kind of financial discipline that might actually work in your favor. If the answer is invest it consistently, then renting in a high cost market can absolutely be a path to building wealth. 3. How long are you planning to stay? Apply what makes sense for your timeline. Short term, the math usually favors renting. Long term, owning tends to win, but not always. That's the framework. Run your numbers with it and make the call that fits your situation. Next video, we'll go into what your credit score is actually costing you in real dollars, because most people have no idea there's a price tag attached to that number.